Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's show is Chapter 5 in the series entitled The Whinlatter Forest Secrets. Without further ado, let's get straight into that. We just barely made it back to the cabin in one piece, the treacherous dirt road making any fast progress impossible. As we tried desperately to get back, the others descended on the area en masse, some bursting from the trees either side of us, others I could see paralleling us as we bounced and flew through the enormous muddy puddles, some as high as the front of my truck, water washing over the front of the hood. Both of us were screaming for our lives, and again I was almost sure that we were to be torn to shreds by these creatures, consumed, and nobody would be any wiser. Yep, there would probably be if we're lucky that is, a news coverage in the same style of bullshit we had watched time and time again since moving up here. A group of campers or young couple have gone missing, blah blah blah. The usual lies that they fed the public. But something incredible happened, just as these beasts closed in on us, and one stood out on the road ahead. Our hearts were in our mouths as we brought the truck to a complete stop and reached for my shotgun. They began to circle and bang at the truck. Then a large dark black Dogman scratched its claws into the body from the rear all the way down the front to Faye's side door. I watched it in the wing mirror getting closer and closer. I started yelling to Faye to steer as I shoot when an almighty thundering came from all around us. And without warning, the Dogmen were attacked from all sides by our new friends, the ancient pack. I wasted no time in hitting the gas and firing 2 shots at the huge Dogman in front of us by just 10 feet. The shot tearing into the side and right shoulder. It growled in anger as white-hot pain seared through its wounds. But still, it stood glaring at us before finally it too was tackled as a monstrous male Dogman began ripping into it with such ferocity. The sound was like tearing into wet clothes. As the 2 enormous prehistoric creatures sank, tooth and claws into each other, blood and bits of flesh sent flying through the air, some of which landing on the rich green leaves of the brush with a sickening splatter. Our ears simply hurt with the sheer volume they produced. It was dwarfing that of a male lion's. We flew around them as best we could, but were forced to drive up into the brush to evade the battle before us. Finally, getting back on a dirt road, we gunned it as best we could as the forest either side of us was flashing past. As we rocked and bounced over the road, here and now it offered glimpses of other Dogman battles taking place in the surrounding forest. Finally, we rounded the steep bend before our driveway and came flying round it like we had stolen the truck. With an almighty final screech and slide, we came to a final stop outside the cabin. "Lock every window when we get in and I'll check the doors," I said to Faye. She nodded as we both jumped out and made a mad dash for the front door, slamming it behind us and running all around like headless chickens, checking everything was secure. The forest was awash with screams and roars throughout the night, but they did seem to be further away as the night drew on, although every now and then I could hear heavy bipedal footfall thumping across our gravel driveway, but each time it would simply fade into the dark forest. Early the next morning, there was a strange ambience to the forest. We awoke to the sound of birds in the trees. It was almost as if the carnage only hours before had never even happened. "Maybe the others are dead. Maybe they retreated back up to the hills," said Faye. But I knew deep down in my gut they weren't dead, nor were they gone. Fleeing to the hills, yes, but they were simply gathering numbers and strength before attacking in numbers again. Only this time, they were angry. I desperately hoped I was wrong, and I sat with Faye on our front deck, eating breakfast and digesting the past few hours' events. "Maybe the book can tell us more. Maybe this has happened before," I said to Faye as she ate the last bite of her toast. "Yeah, I'll get straight on it," she replied. "Okay, I'll go make some more coffee," I added. We spent the rest of that morning until early afternoon reading through page and page of the journal. It again was incredibly detailed, right down to a form of communication that Stuart had developed with the ancient pack. It was almost like sign language, but much, much more basic. Either way, it was fascinating, and the both of us could not get enough. Faye had already worked with children learning to sign, so she picked it up no problem. As we gathered all of this information, there was a familiar noise from out front as two blacked out black trucks revved and roared their way up the dirt road. I ran to the window, peering out behind a curtain so not to expose my position. "Oh, for God's sake!" I cursed aloud. "What? Who is it, Dan?" asked Faye. "It's them, Faye, the ghost agents," I shouted in a blind panic as I sprung across the living room to Faye and the table, grabbing and sweeping up all of our notes and the journal as quickly as I could before running to the kitchen and using my boot to kick out the wooden plinth between the work surface and the floor. I placed the notes and the journal in there carefully before placing the plinth back in place. Just then, there was a loud on the door. The agent outside began shouting,
"Open up, sir. We know you're in there. You can let us in, or we can force our way in. It's up to you, Dan. You have precisely 60 seconds from now."
Laughter could be heard from some of his associates on the decking.
"Tick-tock, Dan."
Again he shouted. "What a piece of shit," I remarked to Faye. She looked at me and smiled. "Go," she replied. I got up and made my way down the long oak floor hallway towards the door, his black suits like a dark distorted shadow behind the glass. As before, when I opened the door, he forced his foot in and then made his way into the cabin. 2 men remained outside. 5 others patrolled a small perimeter of the driveway. "Look, I don't know why you're here again. We've done everything that you asked," I said angrily. "Yes, indeed you did, Danny boy. But it appears you've had a, He paused, mulling over the thoughts, searching for the right words. "You've had a development, did you not? Why didn't you contact me, Dan? I thought we were clear about this agreement of ours." "I don't know what you're talking about, Agent... what's your name? Dick? But things have been as messed up as normal around here. I don't know what else you want from us," I questioned, looking him in the eyes. He seemed to ignore my response and changed the subject instantaneously. "Dear shame about Jimmy, eh, Dan?" He taunted with a smile across his face. I didn't respond, fearing if I did for 1 second acknowledge this prick, there was a good chance I would try and kill him there and then. However, fire raged in my belly, and I'm sure my face said everything that he wanted. "Look, can we just get on with whatever the hell it is that you want?" I demanded furiously. Yeah. Alright, let's get to the point, Danny boy. You have a very old journal that belongs to us, and we want it now." He replied, shaking his bear-sized fist and index finger at me. "What?" I replied, acting completely dumbfounded by his demand. He stood and said nothing for an awkward 20 seconds or so, just staring at me in the eyes. "Right!" His voice boomed. "You leave me no choice, boy," he exclaimed and whistled loudly. Seconds later, the front door flew open and 5 men, all in black balaclavas, came rushing into the cabin. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" screamed Faye and I as they began turning the place upside down, smashing through our belongings. "Give us the journal, Dan!" the agent screamed again, then striking me across my face. I looked and smiled back a bloody-mouthed smile. All right. I'll give it to you. Just stop this bullshit," I responded, spitting blood from my mouth at his boots. "You don't seem too sure, Dan," he shouted back at me over the smashing and crashing his goons were causing to our beautiful home. Yes, I'm sure. Just call them off," I screamed. God, I wanted to annihilate this jumped-up excuse for a thug. If we were in London, he and his men would be in a world of pain. A trip south of the river ought to fix this prick's attitude, no problem, I thought to myself. And just then, I had an idea. Whoa! He shouted as his men ceased destroying our home. Dust hanging heavy in the air, bits and pieces of wood and glass sliding or falling to the floor. "Well, where is it, Dan?" he asked, wiping bits of dust and flakes of paint off his shoulder. "I don't have it on me," I replied. He raised his hand to hit me again, but I cut him short and grabbed his wrist. "I can take you to it, but it's not going to be easy," I said whilst meeting his stare down. "Okay. Where then, Dan? You better start talking, boy," he boomed. "Okay, mate, okay. I'll tell you, but you ain't going to like it," I replied, still maintaining eye contact. His eyelids narrowed and his brow frowned at me. I gave it the best poker face I could. He paused and a stagnant silence hung in the air. "All right, let's hear it then," he beckoned with his hands. "Okay, well, we headed west to the deeper part of the forest about a mile plus. Then we had to hike further on foot until we came upon this huge cave entrance, and he cut me off. "Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, you expect me to believe that you entered this cave? Will you already know about the creatures that lurk around here, Dan?" he shouted. "Well, we thought we were far enough away from the cabin and the pack that lives nearby," I responded, trying to sound the dumbest I had ever in my entire life. "Okay, but you still haven't told me about the journal, Dan," he questioned. "Yeah, that's the fun part. You see, we made our way deeper into the cave until we were a good 200 metres deep. There's a slight incline, but nothing treacherous. As we moved deeper, there was a junction of separate chambers and veins of the tunnels. We flashed a flashlight into the nearest chamber to our right, and it was incredible. There was a bed and seating with an old oil lamp and table. Well, on top of the table was a book, and my guess is this is the journal you so badly want." "Then why didn't you grab it and bring it back, boy?" he again screamed at me. "Because within a minute or two being there, we heard an audible moan or something, and then footsteps. That was enough for us. We got the hell out of there. We didn't even care to look back as we ran to the truck," I finished, still meeting his fiery stare. He remained silent whilst tapping his index finger to his chin. He glanced at his men, who shared the same obvious worried look of uncertainty to my story. Faye stood in silence the entire time. She shot me a sly grin and nod. I took this moment of weakness as an opportunity and asked, "So, what now, G.I. Dick?" He glared at me and smirked. "I tell you what, Danny boy, you and your wife here are going to come on a little field trip," he responded, looking smug as shit. Like he had caught us off guard and now we thought that we faced certain death. Ha ha ha! Ah, what a prick. I played it out like an Oscar performance. "What? No! No! We can't go back there! Those things! Those creatures, they'll kill us all, you madman!" I shouted at him before demanding he leave. Ha 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 ha! He laughed at my response as I glared into his eyes with anger. Oh, if only he and his men knew. It was I and Faye that now had the upper hand here. "Not a problem, Dan. We will return tomorrow at first light, as it's going to be getting dark here soon. But remember, we will be still watching you," he said, and again, so cocky and sure that he was still in control. Yes, it was still a risk. We didn't know for sure of the ancient pack, if they still lived after the battle the night before. But hopefully, we can lead them into the ancient's cave, and from there, if things go to plan, well, I'm sure you can imagine. Yeah, they didn't see him coming. With that, they headed out to the trucks and were gone, at least until morning. I closed the front door and turned to Faye. It's even funny among all the chaos with dust still settling, the taps in the kitchen burst sending flumes of water to the floor. She just laughed, and then I laughed, and together we creased up into fits of laughter. "If we pull this off, we won't be seeing them anymore," I said to Faye as she wiped away a tear from her eyes and cheeks. "I goddamn hope so. Look at this mess." "Forget it. I'll stop the water and give it a quick sweep. You need to get reading. We got one shot at this," I added. "Yeah, okay, baby," she replied before heading upstairs to get changed. The rest of the evening we studied more and more of the journal. Again, as evening swallowed daytime whole and the evil dark swaying shadows stretched their long fingers across our gravel driveway, it grew more quiet, and those familiar sounds that had accompanied us just for one day slowly and surely dissipated until again nothing but the wind and leaves remained. I was right. They were back. We were up early, around 4 before first light. Our stomachs turned with nerves that kept receding and then returning tenfold. It was much too much for me and I vomited in a flower pot outside on a decking. Around 5, as light just started breaking through the low-laying fog that had rolled up from the forest, they arrived. Showing more force in numbers than before, as an extra truck accompanied them this time. I walked down my steps, my hot coffee steam blowing around in the headlights in the wind. "Morning, Dan," a voice said over the hum of the engines. Looking over, I see this dumbass head leaning out the window of one of the trucks. Every now and then a glow would emit from a cigarette in his mouth. "I guess that's where you got that rancid breath from, eh?" I joked. He seemed to ignore my dig and said, "We move out now. You have 5 minutes, Dan. Oh, and don't forget your wife now." A smirk washed over his face. "Whatever, arsehole. Your time is coming," I muttered to myself. "What, boy?" he responded. "I said Faye's just coming, mate," I replied, sniggering to myself. "Okay, we will follow and you lead. Don't try anything flamboyant, Danny boy. We wouldn't want Faye to get hurt or eaten, now would we?" He snapped at me. I nodded and went in to get Faye, shortly returning before getting into our truck and leading the men in theirs down the long and treacherous dirt road toward the west, towards the ancient Dogman cave. "Do you think this will work?" asked Faye. "I haven't got a clue, honey," I replied. A short while later, we came to the end of the road, as forest rose up like a natural wall of solid, ancient oaks. We hopped out and the other trucks followed suit, men scrambling into action. All were heavily armed and wearing full combat armour. Their faces obscured by helmets, masks and night vision headgear, various grenades and other kit hanging from certain hooks and ziplocks. "Let's move out," said the agent, and they pushed me and Faye forward towards the mouth of the cave. Before we fully entered, I caught a glimpse of one of our friends' heads popping up over the top of some brush at the side of the entrance, before disappearing once again out of sight. "This has to work," I thought to myself. "It has to, or we're dead." We progressed down, deeper and deeper into the cave, the air becoming stale and the stench clung in the air, forcing its way into our lungs. Every now and then a heap of bones would clatter as an unsuspecting boot kicked them across the cold stone floor, forcing everyone to hold their position and brace. "How much further, Dan?" The agent tapped me on the shoulder and whispered. "Should be a little further," I responded, hoping to God something would either happen or at least there would be a chamber up ahead that I could stall them in. "Where the hell are they?" I again questioned in my head. A torrent of sweat beading its way down my back and forehead. The exit was now way back, out of sight, and we relied on our flashlights, whilst the agents and his team took to their night vision headgear. A few moments later, the tunnel we had been taking opened up into a mighty, cathedral-sized chamber. Immediately, I thought, shit, I never mentioned a massive chamber to them. Faye instantly glanced at me with a look of worry. She too thought, this is it. But, as the agent turned around to say something, the ceiling moved above our heads, and tiny rocks and dust fell to our shoulders. Each of the men looking up at the rocks above and around us in unison. "Oh shit!" shouted one of the men before all hell broke loose. "You snaky son of a..." was all the agent managed before he was grabbed by two gnarly, hairy, clawed hands that dug into his shoulders and under his collarbones, and then he flew up into the air and into the darkness. An almighty howling so deep I thought the tunnel would collapse, boomed and echoed as it was joined by more and more. The agent was soon followed by 4 of his team as far as I could count at the time. One man's eyes popped out of his skull as a huge hand wrapped around his head from above. Blood and tissue, severed limbs came falling down all over the floor and men. The rest of the men began panicking and forcing back to back in formation, firing uncontrolled bursts of bullets into the dark abyss around. One of the men then turned his gun on Faye and I. "You're coming with me," he screamed. Suddenly, out of apparently nowhere, Jimmy emerged from the darkness and plunged his hunting knife into the man's jugular. I, grabbing Faye, hit the deck and we shuffled our way over into a dark corner behind some boulders. A moment later, one by one, their screams and flashes of gunfire ceased, and the only inaudible moans could be heard, with the hungry, wet slurps and snapping of jaws and bone echoed within the cave, until finally we slowly arose covered in God knows what. All around us growls and moans that resonated in my chest hummed and whooped. "Jimmy! I said as he stumbled over to us, barely able to stand, his leg and stomach torn open with a nasty slash. He fell to the floor as we embraced each other. "I thought you were dead, you old git!" I laughed. All around this enormous chamber, yellow and amber eyes looked back at us, glowing in the pitch-black abyss. "Thank you again," I said aloud with Faye and Jimmy at my side. Then, a large brown or black female dogman, from what we could tell in the dismal flashlight, approached us, and soon others from above and around joined her. A large male dogman grunted at us, shaking his head up and then down, over and over. "I think he wants us to bow to her," Faye remarked, and so we all did. Then, the three of us decided it had been long enough of a visit. "Let's get going," I said to Faye as she was signing something to the large female. With a nod of her enormous head, she turned and disappeared into the darkness once more, the pack following suit, and one by one, they disappeared and were gone. We made our way back to the truck, and I drove Jimmy straight to the hospital. He was going to be fine, save for some major dehydration, concussion, and cuts needing a lot of stitches. I returned to the cabin to find Faye asleep on the sofa, completely and utterly exhausted from the week's events. How the hell did Jimmy survive? And why was he there in that cave? I questioned as I sat down, and slowly I drifted off to sleep. Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed that next chapter. Of course, please do let me know down below as ever in the comment section. Please do like and share. Your support is fantastic. I can't believe the actual amount of lifetime views and watch minutes in the last month was actually unbelievably 1,300,000 watch minutes in 28 days. Incredible numbers, guys. I'm absolutely humbled and touched. I really am. We have some very exciting news that I'm sure some of you will know if you are part of the Cabin family over on Facebook. I will be releasing soon, but stay tuned for that. If you haven't subscribed to DMT, of course, please do smash the subscribe button and join the DMT family. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all DMT content. And remember, guys, get involved and comment below with what you feel or think should happen in the next chapter. And above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.